So we are continuing our series here on family and the Bible, and we're here in Ephesians chapter 6. We're still in Ephesians 6:4, and tonight we're going to be looking more at parenting. We were talking more focused in on children, on disciplining your children, different ways to do that. And now we're going to talk more about parenting advice, and it starts with Ephesians 6:4. So you guys got it here on the board. If you guys have your Bibles, you want to open to it. But it's here on the screens. Ephesians 6:4. Let me read it for you. It says this: "And you, fathers, do not provoke your children to wrath, but bring them up in the training and admonition of the Lord." So the last 2 weeks, we were kind of looking at the second half of this. We did this intentionally, trying to start at the end, and now we're working our way backwards. Just to kind of focus in on certain aspects before we get to this point. But what we looked at, we looked at what does it mean to train your children, which talks about chastisement, which refers to physical discipline. And then last week we were talking about admonition, which is talking about teaching your children using your words and other forms of discipline that would not be physical. If you guys missed those, you guys go back, check those out. And this week, it is my boldface that I put in there. We were looking at the first part. Fathers, do not provoke your children to wrath. So we want to talk about, what does that mean to provoke your children to wrath? It's very vague, and we want to talk about different ways that you could do that so that we can avoid those mistakes. We do not want to provoke our children to wrath, right? So to start off, he says, "And you fathers." And this word fathers could also be translated as parents, okay? It's not specifically the male, the man of the house. That's not exactly what it's talking about, but more parents, you both together, or if you are a single parent, refers to you as well. Do not provoke your children to wrath. Now, this is interesting because there's a verb in the Greek that we can't translate exactly with one word. When you start to study languages, you start to see that this is the case. A lot of times there's one word, and you just don't have one word to match that in English. So you have to put a phrase in there. We have this phrase, provoke to wrath, okay? It's one word in the Greek. So this phrase, to provoke to wrath, what does it mean? Well, it means to anger, to enrage, or to provoke to wrath. Wow, okay. So it doesn't give us a lot of insight, but it's talking about upsetting your kids, okay? Now, probably not referring to the type of upsetting where you're going to come along and just poke them in the side and poke them until they finally explode and start screaming at you. But we're talking about different ways that you can provoke your kids. Now, as we go through, I want to talk about a couple verses from the Proverbs, because the Proverbs talk a lot about this. Proverbs 22:6, this is one we've seen. I want to keep reiterating this verse to get this in our heads. Proverbs 22:6 says, "Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it." And remember, this is an overall principle. It's a proverb. It doesn't mean that's 100% true, because there are people who rebel against it as they're older. They were raised the right way, and yet they don't live the right way as adults, okay? But in general, what we want to do as parents, we want to train up our children in the way that they should go. We want to show them the right path, right? One of the things that Jesus said, he said that we are to enter in by the narrow gate. He said, broad is the way and easy is the path that leads to destruction, and there are many who find it. So it's our job to take our kids and try and point them towards the narrow gate that will be more difficult. There are few who find it, but we want to at least point our kids to it and say, hey, this is the right way. This is the way I'm going. Do you guys want to come with me? Right? Now, they need to make their decision, obviously. But as kids, we have a lot of influence over them. As parents, we have a lot of influence over them and when they're little. So we want to try to teach them, since they're little, the right way to go, the narrow path to follow Jesus, right? So we want to avoid any of these stumbling blocks that we can put in their path that would keep them from entering into the narrow path, right? What happens is parents will come in, they will do things wrong, upset their kids, provoke them to wrath, provoke them to anger, and then their kids say, well, if that's the way my parents are going, I'm not going that way. Okay? So we don't want to be the barrier that keeps kids from coming to Jesus. Jesus said, let the kids come to me, right? So we want to say, hey, go to Jesus. Come on, let's all go to Jesus together, right? Okay, now another thing to keep in mind, Proverbs 19:18. It says this, chasten your son while there is hope, and do not set your heart on his destruction. I underlined the not, that's not in the scriptures, right? Okay. But he says, do not set your heart on his destruction. We're not here to destroy our kids. We're not here to punish them beyond belief. We're here to raise them up in the Lord, to point them in the right direction, and to sometimes chasten them when they're going way off in order to get them on that right path. Okay? So, how do we do this? Or how do we avoid this pitfall of provoking them to wrath? This is a very big question, right? So, today we're going to look at 10 ways that we provoke our children, right? Provoking quotes, because it's like, well, are we really provoking? It's a way of provoking them, right? So we're going to look at 10 things that we can do. There's probably more. Maybe you can think, oh, he didn't say this. He should have said this. You guys can come tell me afterwards. Number 1, being overprotective, okay? Being overprotective. Today we got helicopter parents, right? They're always hovering around their kids, always looking out for their good. Sometimes you got to let your kids go, and you got to let your kids make mistakes. You got to let them fail, okay? This is how kids learn. They run on out, they do something, they fall, they hurt themselves, and then they say, man, I'm not going to do that again, right? And so then we're trying to protect them. You got kids, they're wearing knee pads and elbow pads and helmets everywhere. They can't do anything anymore. We did that stuff as kids, and we made it through. Now, of course, they say, well, there was this one kid. He didn't make it. He had this accident, And so, okay. So we create all these laws and all these rules in order to protect our kids. When I was a kid, if you wore a bike helmet, man, you were in trouble. Because everyone was going to mock you. You were going to be like the ridicule of the school. Like nobody wore bike helmets. It's ridiculous. Today, you can't go anywhere without bike helmets, right? So you got certain kids that now they're going to school. They got hazmat suits on, to make sure they don't catch the virus or whatever it is. So we have to be careful that we're not trying to overprotect our kids, okay? And sometimes, we'll talk about this a little bit later, sometimes it's just our desire because we want to see them do well. We want to protect them. I don't want to see my kid get hurt. And so I want to be there and make sure everything's safe. We build parks that are safer, and we try to set rules so they don't fall and hurt themselves. But there's sometimes you just got to let them learn on their own. Okay. Now, obviously, there are certain things that are so dangerous that could take their lives. You want to keep them away from that. If they're playing near a cliff, you don't want them falling off that cliff. That's not safe. But there are things they have to learn. My son, some of you guys know about this. Last year, he was playing on the monkey bars. We were at a park, and they were playing tag. And I just always let him go, hey, go, man. Go, jump, run, go crazy. So they're playing tag, and they're running up these things and going across the monkey bars, and they're trying to stay away. Well, he was trying to swing, and he was trying to jump out to get away from somebody. And as he was swinging, he tried to really use his force. Well, he swung back, lost his balance, and fell off the monkey bars, right? He fell right on his hip. Got this safe park. It's all made of wood chips and all this stuff. It's supposed to be soft. It's not soft enough, right? Broke his femur up by his hip. And so we had to take him in the hospital. He had surgery that night. It was stressful. And they put in 2 screws into his hip. Still got him. He still got these 2 screws in his hip. So he's still recovering. He's almost 100%, but you see him when he runs. He's still a little stiff, a little funny. But he learned a lesson. Now, that wasn't something that we were trying to don't go on the monkey bars. You're going to fall. We never did that. We just said, go play, Didn't think that would happen. I played on monkey bars for years. Never fell. Or maybe I did fall. I don't know. Never broke anything. So he fell. Now, you see him. You see a park. Hey, you want to go play in the park? No. He doesn't want to play, right? Now, we got to build up his confidence a little bit. But we can't be overprotective, right? He learned a lesson, and he is very careful now in order to make sure he doesn't fall because he doesn't want to go through that again. So these failures, these times when kids fall, that's the point when they learn the most, right? So we have to be careful to keep them away from the situations that are going to truly wound them, and allow them to make mistakes where they will really learn, right? I always say there's two ways to learn in life. You can learn from others, or you can learn for yourself. When you learn for yourself, it's harder, but it's very powerful, right? Because you learn, you're like, man, I am not doing that again. But when you know, hopefully we as human beings can learn from other people, and we can say, okay, what did they do well? Oh, that's good. I'm going to try to do that. And that way we avoid the errors that are so costly, right? So anyway, we do have to let our kids learn for themselves at times. It's difficult. It's difficult to see them fail. There's times when you have to let them forget their homework at home and be like, hey, sorry, bud, you forgot your homework. And let them deal with the consequences of, hey, now you got to sit and do your homework at recess, or now you got an F on that because you didn't bring your homework. It's okay. They will learn, right? Maybe even let them forget their lunch one time, right? That's tough, but again, they won't die from missing one lunch. They'll probably get some food from the office or from other people. They'll probably get half a sandwich from a friend. They'll learn to be resourceful, right? So if you're always running after them to fix their errors or make sure that they didn't forget anything, they're not going to learn, right? Let them learn. Let them learn. If your kid's always late, right? Let them be late. Let them deal with the consequences of the school, right? Maybe they're going to get detention or something like that. Let them be late, right? One of the things we did when my daughter was little, she was always, seemed to be going slow intentionally. I don't know if it was intentional or not, but it seemed like it. And so what I did just one day, I was like, all right, it's time to go. Let's go. Because I would drive her off to school, and then I would usually go to our church. And so I just got in the car and turned on the car and started backing out. And she came running. She's like, no, wait. And she jumped in, and the next day she was out. She was waiting in the car when I got out there. So think about these things. Let them fail. Don't be overprotective. This is very important that they learn what reality of life. They learn that every action has consequences, right? Okay, number 2, the opposite, being overly permissive. Okay, now you can go to either extreme and it'll be wrong, right? You can be overprotecting, you can be overpermissive. Overpermissiveness is just you letting your kids do whatever they want. And there are some kids that grew up like this. That, I had friends like this. They said, when I'm older, I'm going to let my kids do whatever they want. It's like, that's the dumbest thing you've ever said. We do not want to let our kids do whatever they want because they're going to end up doing something that's really wrong or hurtful to them or to others, right? So we want to make sure we are not allowing them to do everything that's in their heart's desire. Remember, the heart is deceitful and wicked above all else, right? That's what Isaiah tells us. So we want to be careful that we are guiding those hearts in the right way and not allowing them to do everything. Now, if you don't allow them to do anything, then that's a problem too, right? So we got to find that balance. This is very difficult to do. But overpermissiveness is going to create a sense of entitlement. It's going to allow them to feel like they can do whatever they want, whenever they want. It's going to create a sense of disrespect towards authorities. And I think that's probably what's happening a little bit in our society today. Kids think they can do whatever they want. One of the verses that I was thinking about with this is Proverbs 13:24. It says, he who spares his rod hates his son, but he who loves him disciplines him promptly, right? So we talked about that. That over-permissiveness is allowing your kids to do whatever they want and having no consequences from them, right? We want to make sure that we discipline our kids, right? If we actually love our kids, we're going to discipline. If you do not love your kids, you don't discipline. Let them do whatever they want. That's not real love, right? So we want to be very careful that we are finding a balance of not being too controlling, not being too permissive, but allowing them to do certain things, but not other things, right? So you're going to have to probably sit down with your spouse, or if you're a single parent, you're going to have to set some rules for them. Remember, kids love boundaries. They love limits. So set some limits and say, hey, you're not doing this, but you can do this, okay? You can go here, but not here, okay? And that's it. So kind of establish those limits for the kids. Okay, number 3. Excessive or harsh discipline, right? This is another one of the extremes. Like, if you're just beating your kids, like, you're going to provoke your kids to wrath. That's not right. That's one of the things that we talked about first day. You do not want to go above and beyond the limit. You want to set a limit so that you don't cross that. And that's more for you than it is for them. That you set that limit and you say, hey, this is what we're going to do. Okay? This is it. We said, when we were physically disciplining our kids, we said, okay, 3 swats, that's the limit. 3 swats, okay? Now, some people think, that's not enough. Maybe your kid needs more, right? Our kids were pretty obedient for the most part, but every kid's different, so you might need to set different limits for different kids, right? One of the things I remember is my kids, both of them, and probably most of your kids did this too. We went out in public, and you get to the point when they're 1, 2, right about 2, and they start not wanting to hear no. Right? And you're like, hey, no, don't touch that. And so what happened, both my kids started doing this. They just threw themselves on the floor and started kicking and screaming. And they did it out in public, right? So we were in this little tiny pharmacy down in Brazil. I mean, it's tiny. It's like about the size of the stage. And she was grabbing something. I said, no, don't grab that. And she's, throws herself on the floor and starts kicking and screaming. And everyone's looking at us, right? And I'm like, stop it, get up, stop it. And she's not stopping. And I was like, get up now, get up. And so then I was like, okay, this is serious, right? So then I scoop her up. I said, you are going to get it. And I scoop her up, put her on my shoulder, and I carry her out, right? Well, we went home, and she got the limit, right? 3 spankings. And I said, you do not act that way. You do not do that, right? And so she learned pretty quick. She did it one more time, and that was in our house. There was someone there, I think it was my mother-in-law, and they were leaving, and something happened, and she threw herself on the floor. I remember it was right in front of the stairs, and I was sitting on the stairs saying goodbye, and I was like, cut it out. You get up right now. She's like, just flinging all her limbs and screaming. And so I picked her up, took her upstairs, swatted her. 3 swats, right? She never did it again. Okay? So kids learn. Kids learn with physical discipline. Now, my son did the same thing, and it took him a few more times. It was at least 5 to learn that. So he did it like 5. He kept doing it. I said, you're going to get it again. So some kids are different, right? But they all learn. Now, we have to be careful not to cross that line and be overly harsh, right? Like I'm just going to wail on you until you stop crying. Well, that's not going to work. They're just going to keep crying, right? So don't go crazy. You can't go beating your kids, right? But you need to make sure that they're disciplined, right? You need to make sure that they're disciplined. So one of the things that will provoke them to wrath more than anything is probably overly physical discipline. If you're going through and beating your kids, they will resent you when you are older. Now, maybe some of you guys are here and you got beat pretty hard and you still have a little something in your heart for your parents who might not even be here anymore because they were just too harsh, right? So we want to be careful that we don't do that, especially with our little kids, right? Because that's really brutal. Number 4, inconsistent discipline, okay? Inconsistent discipline. So what is inconsistent discipline? One day you're in a bad mood and you just wail on them. The next day they do the exact same thing or something very similar, no discipline at all, okay? You got to be careful with that. You have to set boundaries, you have to set limits, and you have to give rules, right? So if you do this, this is what's going to happen. Now, if you set it and you said, hey, if you act like this, this is what's going to happen, and that doesn't happen, what they're learning is it doesn't matter what mom or dad says. They don't have integrity with their words. Now, they don't even know what integrity is, but you got to make sure that you are teaching them what integrity is, right? So if you say, all right, if you touch this, you're not supposed to touch it, you're going to get a timeout. And then they go over and they touch it. Oh, gosh, you're out of control. And then you walk away and you don't put them on timeout. You're telling them it doesn't matter what I say, right? So you got to make sure that you are consistent with what you say and what you do. This is so important. This is probably the hardest thing about being a parent because one day you're distracted. You got 15 things going on, and now I got to discipline my kid. And I'm like, I can't. I'm on the phone, and I'm trying to cook dinner at the same time, and the food's going to burn. We don't have time for this. You have to try your best to be consistent with discipline, okay? Now, this is important. This is why God created 2 parents, right, to work together so that one parent can be on the phone and cooking, and the other parent can be dealing with the kid. Okay? What happens sometimes is in some families, doesn't always happen, some families, you got one person that's all love and grace, and the other one is the disciplinarian. And then everyone's running from the disciplinarian, running to the love and grace, and the love and grace is there to try to protect the kids against the disciplinarian. That cannot happen. Remember? Kids' goal is to conquer, and divide, right? Divide and conquer. I might have said it wrong. Divide and conquer. They want to separate you guys. So you have to make sure that you guys as parents are on the same page, right? Make sure you are on the same page. If you guys are inconsistent, what they're going to think is it all is based upon the mood of my mom or dad. Okay? You don't want discipline to be based upon your mood, right? Oh, today's in a good mood. We're gonna get this. I remember going to my friend's house when I was a kid, and they got in trouble, right? And we were going over there to play Nintendo, and the Nintendo's gone. And they're like, oh, where is it? It's up in the closet. My dad took it away. I was like, oh, dang, we can't play. But then his friend came over, and they were like, oh, his friend came over. He's going to be in a good mood. Let's go ask if we can get it back. And so then they went and he gave it back, right? Because his friend was over. He was feeling all good. I was there, And so we got the Nintendo back. And it was like, oh, okay, so he's in a good mood. Yesterday he was in a bad mood, so we lost Nintendo. Today he's in a good mood. We get it back. It's like, what? No. It's got to be like, hey, you lost it. You lost it for this many days, and that's final. It doesn't matter who's here. Doesn't matter what happens. Go find something else to do, right? So it's very important that we stay consistent, that it's not based upon your mood or your feelings. Discipline should be consistent, not based upon that, right? Okay. Number 5, double standard. Having a double standard or hypocrisy, right? Hypocrisy, that's a tough word. No one wants to be a hypocrite, and yet all of us are hypocrites at some time or another, okay? We try not to be, but it's almost impossible not to be. So we want to make sure that we are trying to live out the things that we teach to our kids. So if you're a parent and you're saying, oh, no, teenager, you can't smoke, that's terrible. And then you're smoking behind the scenes, that's terrible. I remember my brother-in-law told me that. He'd see his parents smoked, but then when people from the church would come over, they'd spray all this stuff around the house, try and make it hide the cigarettes, and make sure that no one saw it. And he was like, something's not right here. And so when he saw, and there were other things going on as well, but he said when he saw that hypocrisy, he was like, well, they don't think it's that important to follow Jesus, so why do I? Oh, man, that's serious. And now he walked away from Jesus. Now, praise the Lord, he's back, he's walking with Jesus, doing really well. But that was a big thing for him, and then he was in high school. He was like, well, let's go out and let's see what the world has. He started partying, went off to college, became a frat boy, all sorts of stories there, I'm sure. But it took him a while to come back to Jesus, right? So we want to make sure that we are not living by a double standard. I get to do something and you don't, right? Or, as the famous saying is, do what I say, not what I do, right? That can never be the case with Christians. We can't do that. Just listen to what I say. It doesn't matter if I did it or not. No. And so this is why it's so important, like we talked about last week, to make sure that you always apologize for your errors. You crossed the line, you did something that you weren't supposed to do. You said, no, kids, we cannot do that. And then you do it, they say, hey, you did it. You said we can't. Got to apologize, right? Make sure you confess, hey, I messed up. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have done that. Please forgive me, right? Make sure that they see that side of repentance and remorse, right? There's some sort of reconciliation going on because you're setting the example of how we work as adults with Jesus, right? We mess up with Jesus. We come back to Jesus. We apologize. Oh, Lord, I messed up again. Please forgive me. Please fill me afresh with your Holy Spirit. I am in the flesh. I messed up, right? That's what it means to be a Christian. You're able to recognize your errors and come to Jesus, right? What happens in the world, they might recognize their error. Some of them don't, some of them do, but they're not coming to Jesus and asking for forgiveness and receiving the grace that only Jesus has, right? So we set that example in home for our kids, and we go through and we show them, hey, I messed up. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. And, I've had numerous times when I had to go in, I screamed at the kids, I got mad at something, I did something I wasn't supposed to do, and I came in, hey, guys, I'm sorry. I messed up again. Please forgive me. And typically, you'll find kids are very forgiving. They want to have that reconciliation with their parents. They want to have a good relationship. So if you're going in and setting that example, now when they mess up, they can come and they can apologize and have reconciliation. Now you're building the foundation for solid relationships in the future, right? What relationship are you going to have, if any, if you have no forgiveness, right? As soon as you make a mistake, end of relationship. Man, that's brutal. We're all sinners. We all are going to make mistakes. So we need that forgiveness, right? So we have to set an example. We cannot be hypocrites and say, hey, you hit your brother, you apologize. But I do things, and I'm not going to apologize. No. We as parents, we need to work with our kids and set the example and not be hypocrites, not have a double standard. All right. Halfway there, guys. We're almost there. Number 6, showing favoritism. Okay? Showing favoritism. Now, it's weird because I remember when my wife's cousin had their second baby, and we were like, so you love them the same? Like, how, like, you know, you have your first kid, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing. I got this little baby. I just love him so much. And they're like, if we had another one, could I love something the same way that I love this baby? And her cousin was like, yeah, you love them the same. It's so weird. But that's how God works, right? God shows no favoritism. Right? The Bible says he shows no favoritism to anybody, and he wants us to show no favoritism to anybody. So it's not like we come into church and we say, hey, this front pew, this is the most comfortable. We got massage things on the back, It's just fantastic. We're going to let only the best people sit up front. The people who give the most money, they're going to sit up front in this fantastic new pew. The rest of you guys sit in the back, right? It's not how we do it. Everybody has an opportunity to sit equally in all of the pews, right? You can sit anywhere you want. We're not going to show favoritism. So we as parents need to be the same way. We are not to show favoritism to one kid over another. That is never the way that we're supposed to be. And so what we want to do is we want to encourage the family to be a unit. We are a family. We are together. We all love each other the same. And if you can, although it's tough when they're little, try to encourage your kids. Hey, keep telling them, hey, you guys are best friends. When you guys get older, friends will come and go, but you'll always have each other. That's true, right? You'll always have each other. And this is tough because the Proverbs tell us that a brother is born for adversity, right? That you have a brother to fight with, right? But we don't want to have that. But we want to make sure that we are trying to build that relationship inside of our house, right? To make sure that siblings are close to one another and supporting one another, okay? Now, what happens if you start to show a little bit of favoritism, then it creates competition, okay? Now, competition in general is not a bad thing, but when you have competition in the house, what they're doing is they're fighting for love. Now, they might not think that, but that's what they're doing. No, but look at what he did. Oh, he did that. No, well, at least I didn't do that. Well, and they start battling, and they're trying to put each other down to show, look at, I'm better. And we had to keep affirming all of our kids, no, I love you no matter what, okay? I love you no matter what. I love her. I love him. I love him. I love you guys all the same. I love you guys no matter what. There's nothing you can do to make me stop loving you, okay? This is so important. Now, I'm actually getting ahead. This is my next point, so I need to stop there. But we need to make sure the family is a unit. And I don't know how to do this exactly. There's all sorts of ways. So you can think about the different ways. But what you want to do is you want to create that environment where we're all working together, where one person does one job, another person does another. We talked about chores, right? Don't pay your kids to do chores. Don't pay them. That's part of their responsibility of being part of the family. Right? So, hey, your job is to take out the trash. Your job is to vacuum the carpets. Okay? We each got a job. So we got to make sure that we're all doing our jobs together. And we work together to be a family unit. And I don't know if this is right, but, I've heard some people, they talk about, hey, we're the Stowes, right? And we're here. We're together, right? We never did that. But some families do that. It gives that sense of pride in the family. In order that we say, hey, we're all together in this. We fight for one another. We support one another, right? And try to encourage your kids as best you can when one is playing a sport or they're involved in a play or they're doing some sort of performance, that the other one's there and supporting them. And you're telling them, hey, clap for them. Hey, tell them they did a good job, right? Try to encourage that type of behavior so that they know there's no battle going on, right? There's no competition between like, oh, she's better at this. Well, no, that's not how it works. One is gifted in one way, one's gifted in another. Maybe they do the same thing. Maybe they play the same sport. Doesn't matter. They're going to each work in their own way, right? And we're going to support everybody. So do your best to not show favoritism. This is very, very important. This will drive kids nuts. One of the things that drove Michael Jordan, he said that he felt like his older brother was the favorite. I believe his name's Larry. Larry Jordan. I'm not sure. But he felt like his dad loved his brother more than him, and that drove him, and he just wanted to be so much better than his brother. And his brother was older, and so he was a little bit bigger and stronger, although now he's not at all. But that motivated him. And so he wanted to prove everything in order to get his dad's love and show that he was better than his brother. Well, it made him a superstar, but it doesn't mean he's emotionally healthy, right? So we got to be careful that we're not driving our kids to be the next Michael Jordan because they want to prove that they are the favorite of the family and they want to earn your love. Nah, they should have your love no matter what, right? Okay, so that goes on to my next point. I kind of got ahead of myself. Number 7, using love as a reward or as a punishment, right? You don't give and take love. Never, right? Does God do that with us? No, never. God doesn't say, oh, well, you did that and I don't love you anymore. That's not how God works. God is love, right? He is the God of love. And so he is going to pour out his love upon you. He's waiting to pour out more and more grace upon each of us. But he's waiting for our response, right? We have to respond to that. And so, no matter what we do, no matter how bad we sin, no matter how many times we promised God we would never do that sin again, and then we did it again, he never stops loving us. Never. He continues to pour out love upon love upon love, okay? This is how we ought to be with our kids, right? Now, this is hard because we as parents are sinners and God is not. So his love is consistent and our love ends up, kind of changing a little bit through time. But what we want to do is we want to affirm our kids and affirm our love for them in every situation. And so that's what we want to do. We want to go through and we want to tell them, hey, we love you. Okay? We love you no matter what. I keep telling my kids, no matter what you do, you cannot make me stop loving you. Doesn't matter if you're in jail. Doesn't matter if you get in trouble. No matter what it is, I'm going to keep loving you. I might not be happy with your decisions, but I'm going to keep loving you. So make sure that love is constant and you're not using that as a form of manipulation to get them to do what you want. Okay? So that's what I've seen. I've seen some really sick things that some parents will go through and they'll actually manipulate using love. They'll kind of like use it as a reward. Say, okay, now you're doing what I want. Now I love you, And this comes into affection as well, that we want to make sure that we're giving affection to our kids and making sure that they are feeling the love from you and also from God. Okay. Now, what happens is when we start using love and giving love, taking it away, is it creates insecurity with our kids. And so that creates all those problems. That goes into the Michael Jordan thing. He was insecure in that way, thought he was not good enough, and so he wanted to prove that he was good enough by having these great achievements in basketball. And that's really, that's what happens. You see a lot of people who are overly competitive, and it might be in business, it might be in anything. It could be in art, whatever it is. They're going to try and prove that they're good enough. They're prove that they're worthy of love. Well, we want to make sure that we are not feeding that the wrong way. We want to make sure, no, you don't have to do that to be loved. You are loved, right? You want to be a great athlete? Great. But it has nothing to do with the love that God has for you or the love that we as a family have for you, right? Tell them that over and over again, So make sure that your kids are not developing that insecurity because they don't have that. I'm sorry, I'm trying to read my notes here. God's love is consistent, and so ours should be as well, okay? So tell them how much you love them. Make sure they feel that, right? Do some things for them. Now, this gets into some interesting stuff. Maybe some of you guys have seen the book, The 5 Love Languages, right? Very famous book, sold millions of copies. But what it does, it goes through and it talks about how, in general, everyone has their 5 love languages, and they usually have 1 or 2 of these love languages. And they're ways that we give love or receive love. And so it talks about having words of affirmation. Some people just love to hear nice words, right? Some people, you tell them a nice thing, and it makes them feel uncomfortable, right? So maybe they like gifts, right? Some sort of gift. You give them a gift. Hey, I was thinking about you. Got you this gift. Oh, my gosh. I see my son light up when you buy him a gift. He just loves it. You give me a gift, and I get kind of uncomfortable, and I'm like, oh, thank you. I don't know how to respond, right? I'm learning as I get older. But then some people, they love acts of service. Someone does something for them, and it's like, man, I feel so loved. This guy came out, washed my car, changed my oil, whatever it was. What are the other ones? Words of encouragement. What? Quality time. Oh, yeah. Some people just love quality time. You're just spending time with somebody. So anyway, you guys need to check out the book, Five Love Languages. I think you can find it for free online. It's probably on PDF. But this is very important. Your kids have a certain way that they receive love. Okay? So are you showing them love in that way? Right? I remember a friend, her dad was a gift giver. She was totally not a gift giver, or a gift receiver. And so her dad would buy her stuff, but he wouldn't ever spend time with her. He wouldn't talk to her. And she just wanted to spend time with him. But parents were separated, and it was a mess. And so she just felt like there was like this lack of father in her life, even though he was like buying all these gifts for her because he had money. It wasn't meeting that need in her heart. She wasn't feeling loved. So get to know your kids, spend time with them so you can see what do they love, what's the way they receive love. Try to use that to show them the love that God has for them, that you have them. Okay. Number 8, connected to what I was talking about as well. Pushing for success or achievements. Okay? Everybody wants their kids to be better than they are. Okay? Now, maybe there's a few sick people out there who's like, no, they'll never be as great as me. Okay? Then you need help. But everybody who's normal wants their kids to be better than them. You know, I want to see my kid, whether it be like in sports, I want my kid to be so much better than me at baseball or basketball, whatever it was. You know, I want my kid to be so much better than me at school. I want him to be a good student because I wasn't a good student. You know, I want to be a good student. Whatever it is, we want our kids to be better. And so what happens sometimes in that desire to see your kid be better than you start pushing, right? You start pushing, go, come on, you can do more. And we end up getting to the point where we are pushing our kids way too much, right? There was a story about a guy, some of you guys might have known him, Todd Marinovich. I'm sorry, I'm saying it wrong. Todd Marinovich. Todd Marinovich was from my hometown in Southern California, was a fantastic football player, went on to play at USC. Sorry. And then went on, got drafted in the first round. I think he played only for the Raiders. But this guy was fantastic. So this guy, his dad pushed him. He wanted him to be the greatest quarterback ever. And he was out as a kid. He would, be running. His dad would be driving next to him. Keep going, 2 more miles, and just pushing this kid to be the greatest. Well, he was the greatest. He set all sorts of records in Southern California when he was in high school, went off, had an amazing college career, got drafted, I believe, in the first round to the Raiders, and then he had a meltdown. And he couldn't get along with anybody. He was always fighting with everybody. He'd been pushed so much that he just basically snapped. And he walked away from the Raiders, quit the Raiders, walked away, was making probably millions of dollars at that point, walked away, and then got involved in all sorts of bad stuff. Got in drugs, eventually went to jail. I mean, it was like a big, big mess. And I saw an interview with him not too long ago, maybe 2 years ago, and he was talking about what he was doing. He was working as a landscaper, doing construction and landscaping, and he said, you know what, it's a lot better to be playing football than be doing this. And he made a lot more money playing football as well, right? But it's like he got pushed to a point where he just couldn't take it anymore, and he snapped, right? So now this is kind of an extreme example, but we want to make sure that we're not pushing our kids, right? We want to find what our kids are passionate about and encourage them to do that. That's great. And if we can take them to the practice or to the class or the extra class or whatever it is that they love, great, let's do that. But we don't want to push them to be the greatest of all time because that's absurd, right? We are going to push them to the point where they break, they snap, and then there's going to be repercussions of that. And whenever kids start to feel that, man, it's going to have a bad effect upon their lives, right? So this is something that we want to battle with what we talked about last week, vitamin E, right? Encouragement. So encourage them to do the things they love. Hey, they love baseball, great. Hey, great job, bud, keep going, Hey, you want to go to the batting cage? You want to go to, throw some balls with me, whatever? Go do that with them. But you can't be pushing them to be the greatest ever. Hey, did you practice today? Come on, man, it's 4 o'clock. You got to get out there. Like, if you start pushing them to be the greatest of all time, most kids, they can't make it. One of the things I remember, I loved tennis when I was growing up. And my favorite was Andre Agassi. You guys remember him? He was so cool, and he had the long mullet back then in the 80s and all the fancy clothing that no one wore back that time. And I was like, this guy's so cool. I just loved him. And what happened, Andre Agassi went through ups and downs. But what he wrote an autobiography when he finally retired. And he won some amazing championships. He was awesome. But he said that at a certain point, he just hated tennis. He felt trapped. He felt imprisoned by it because his dad had him out there. There's videos of him I saw. I don't know, he's 3 or 4 years old out there hitting the ball. Boom, boom. His dad's hitting the ball. Come on, hit it back, Andre. Boom, boom. And then he got into camp, and then he went off away from his family to go to train year-round, and he was just a kid, right? And it's like, no, a kid doesn't need to be off training for some professional sport when he's little. He needs to be with his family, right? He needs his family far more than he needs that. Now, he gets older, and he says, hey, I want to play tennis. Great. Go play tennis. You want to hit the ball? Let's go hit the ball, right? But you put them out there and you start forcing them and pushing them, they're going to snap. Now, he got involved in drugs. He had all sorts of problems. He got married and divorced. And, really, he finally settled in once he got older, and he's doing better now. But he actually accepted Jesus and then walked away from Jesus. So I don't know if he's back with Jesus or not. But he got a hot mess, right? Now you look at him and you're like, this guy's got everything. He had this huge contract with Nike. He won all these grand slams. He was like number one in the world for different times in his career. What a success, right? Not really, right? Was he well emotionally? Was he well mentally? Not really. So we want to be careful that we're not pushing our kids too much. Especially dads, if you're pushing your kids in sports, be careful, right? You don't want to do that. Encourage them. Don't push them. Okay, number 9. We're almost there, guys. Hang in there. Number 9. This sounds weird, but not caring enough. Okay? Now, this is rare. This is very rare. Like I said, most parents want their kids to be better than them. But there are a few that are they're in their own world. They're so selfish. What you see, this is what I see. This is my opinion, okay? What you see is that when you have a parent that's really kind of a strong personality, selfish, a little bit egotistical, right? They really want their kids to be the best, right? Then there's a line, it seems, that you cross that line, you become super egotistical, that you don't even care about your kids, okay? So you want to be careful that you're not either one, right? You want to love your kids, but make sure you're not the latter, the one that's looking at their kids saying, no. I don't even know what they're doing. I don't know. I got my own life. I'm worried about myself. This is really serious, and this will destroy a child, right? This will provoke them to wrath. So if they feel like they don't care, if kids feel like you don't care, they're going to end up resenting you like crazy. Kids need attention. I feel like that's one of the main things that kids need. Especially when they get into teenage years, right? They don't want to hang out with you as much, but they still need that attention. Kids need attention, right? And that's why some kids act out and do things that they're not supposed to do in order to get your attention, right? You're like, hey, don't touch that. And they go over and they touch it. Sometimes they're testing you. Sometimes they're just crying out for attention, right? You see different kids who they'll jump on a table and do a dance and, hey, look at me. They're just doing anything to get that attention from their parents because their parents are busy. They're working. They're doing their own thing, right? Make sure that you are giving your kids the attention that they deserve, right? Now, there is a point when it's like, hey, it's time for you to go be in your room and go play by yourself. I'm not here to entertain you, right? You got to find balance in this, but you got to make sure that you're giving your kids the attention that they need. Along with this is the affection, right? Affection, talking about like physical affection, giving them hugs, rubbing their back, right? Coming over, giving them a kiss on the head, whatever it is. Like make sure that they're getting that physical affection along with the attention. This is so important. There's so many people that they're so needy, and then they're running out after some love out in the world when they get older, and then you wonder, why are they jumping around? Why is this lady jumping around from guy to guy to guy to guy? That's not right. Why is this guy, he's going through after woman after woman after woman after woman, right? What's going on? There's some sort of wound that they're dealing with that they're looking to fill that with, and we have to make sure that we're keeping our kids healthy and strong emotionally and giving them the love that God would want them to have, right? So, very important. This is going to be more rare. Hopefully there's no one in this church that falls into this category, but it is something that we have to say because if your kids aren't getting enough attention at home, they're going to find it somewhere else, and they're not going to find it usually in Jesus, right? So we got to be careful. Okay, last one, number 10, discouragement, okay? Discouragement. We want to make sure that we are encouragers and not discouragers, okay? This is so important. If we are to make sure that we are building our kids up and leading them to Jesus. We want to encourage them to live the right way, right? We want to point them to that narrow path that Jesus said he is, right? So how do we discourage our kids? Well, there's two main ways that I thought of. There's probably a number of other ways that we could branch off into, but criticism and perfectionism, okay? Criticism and perfectionism. Some of us, we're just naturally critically spirited, okay? We have a critical spirit. We walk in and we're like, why are those lights like that? Why are the fans aren't fast enough? What's going on here? Why is that person sitting there? Why don't they move in? And we just start finding everything that's wrong in a place. You could walk into a store and why would they put the display here? They should have it over there. Why is that sign is crooked? What are they doing? And we have that critical eye, okay? Now, that can be a blessing in some cases, but we have to make sure that we're not putting that critical eye onto our kids. This will provoke your kids to wrath like nothing else, okay? Connected to that is perfectionism, because you start criticizing and you start expecting them to be perfect. They're kids. They're never going to be perfect, right? So we want to make sure that we understand, hey, kids are going to mess up. They're going to do something wrong. And this applies obviously for our grandkids as well. They're going to run around. They're going to break stuff. Man, my grandma, my grandma and grandpa were stationed over in China. And my mom actually lived over in China when she was a little girl. And so then they bought all this stuff. And then they left at a certain point and they shipped all their stuff back. So my grandma had all this Chinese furniture. We still have it. And there were all these little figurines, all these little Chinese figurines. Well, I was a little guy, and I go to my grandma's house, and I want to play with the little figurines. And so half of them were broken because of me. Because I'm going through, and I'm like, just drop them, And I remember this one guy, he was holding a book. It looked like a Buddha, although Buddha's not Chinese. But it looked like this little Buddha guy, and he's reading a book. And I knocked him over, and of course, broke his wrist. And so then the book was not there. So they made to glue the wrist back on, And so then when I was older, my younger cousins came in. I was like, hey, guys, stay away, because I already broke this one, and this one, and this one, And you don't want to do that. Kids do that, right? Now, you want to tell them, hey, don't touch that stuff. You gotta watch after them. But you gotta understand, kids are gonna break stuff. Kids are gonna make mistakes. If we are demanding perfection of them, man, they are gonna be frustrated because they're never going to reach that perfection. Okay? Same thing when it comes to grades, or when it comes to sports, or when it comes to art, or whatever it is. If we start demanding perfection, going out there and it's like, hey man, why'd you miss that free throw? Come on. It's like, what they're going to miss, Even Steph Curry misses free throws, and that guy's like the best shooter I've ever seen in my life. Okay, so we have to be careful that we're not pushing our kids to perfection. Okay, kids, you got to understand, you're going to make mistakes. It's okay to make mistakes. It doesn't mean that you just go, whatever, I'm not going to try because I'm just going to make mistakes. No, you still try, right? And we as parents, we come alongside to encourage them as they're trying. Hey, keep trying. Shoot another free throw. Let's see if you can make it. You'll make the next one. It's all right. You missed that one. It's okay. This is something that's so important that we don't push our kids towards that. You will destroy a kid's psyche if you start pushing them, being overly critical and pushing them towards perfection, okay? And this will create destructive cycles in their lives. It could create a fear of failure where they don't want to try anything. Man, I got a friend. He's got issues, man, and he's really hurting. But he doesn't want help, right? His dad was so hard, so critical, always pushing him. And he just got to the point where he didn't want to do anything. He went to college, got a degree, and then just lived at home and just worked real simple jobs, working at supermarkets. There's nothing wrong with that, but he had potential to do a lot more. And just never moved out and was living at home, doing nothing. And people were like, what's wrong with him? It was a classic fear of failure. If you go through and you read about that, psychology, it is something that affects people who have dealt with perfectionism and criticism their whole life, right? They're afraid to make a failure because they're going to be criticized. So then it's like, it's better to not do anything than to do something wrong or do it not perfect. So I just sit at home. It's easier to do that, right? We don't want our kids doing that. We want them going out. We want them to be encouraged to go on out and take ventures of faith, steps of faith, whatever you want to say. We want them to go on out and try things and fail. Hey, no problem. If you fail, you come back home. We'll help you. We'll help you get back on your feet. Try it again. There's people who started businesses that were multi-billion-dollar businesses. They failed 2, 3, 4, 5 times before they finally hit that big business, right? We want to encourage them. Hey, go on out. Go try it, right? What's the worst that happens? Okay, you file for bankruptcy. Move back home. It's okay. Then we'll help you. Keep going, right? So we want to encourage people to make failures, to take steps of faith. We want to encourage them to step out and try new things, right? So don't get discouraged, kids, because this is so important. You guys have to try new things. You're going to fail, okay? Now, maybe you're like, okay, I can't sing. I'm not going to try to get on, The Voice or, America's Got Talent or whatever it is, okay? No problem. Maybe that's not your gifting. But things within your gifting, things within your passions, try it. What's the worst that happens? You fail, and you learn from it, and you keep going, okay? Maybe some of you guys have heard the story of, was it Thomas Edison? No. Benjamin Franklin was creating the light bulb. Edison was creating the light bulb, yeah. I'm like, wait, which one is it? Now I'm all confused. That he kept failing and failing and failing. He failed like 10,000 times to create the light bulb. And people said, man, aren't you discouraged? And he said, no, I'm just finding that's another way that the light bulb doesn't work or something like that. And anyway, so he just kept going and going and going. And every time he failed, he said, okay, now I found another way that's not it. So now I'm that much closer to the solution. So we want to encourage our kids, right? So this is it, guys. We do not want to provoke our kids to wrath. This is something that Paul the Apostle writes to us. And if Paul writes it, it's obviously important, it's inspired by God and given to us in the Scriptures. So we want to avoid these pitfalls. These are things that will really affect our kids. I know this is a lot, and you're like, man, I don't know if I can remember all those points. It's okay. We're here to try our best and then to pray for our kids and pray that Jesus gets a hold of them and leads them in the right direction, right? So let me pray for us and close our time here. Father, we thank you so much for all these lessons that you're teaching us. And I pray, Lord, that you would strengthen the families here in this church. We want to see more young families coming in. We want to see more healthy young kids growing up and learning about Jesus. And we want to see this place being a place where kids love to come. So help us as parents to raise our kids to be followers of Jesus and to know you and to experience you in all of your glory. And I pray, Lord, that you would give us wisdom and understanding and insight into our kids and into their lives. Give us humility to deal with difficult situations. And give us love, lots of love. That if we err on the side of loving our kids too much. I know no kid has complained, my parents love me too much. And so we want to follow that, Lord. So help us to do that. Fill us with your love and guide us so that we can raise strong, healthy kids who love Jesus. So guide our time here. Help us to praise you in your Holy Spirit. In Jesus' name.